What are the greatest exercises of all time? You might have your picks, I have mine. I'm gonna let you debate me. Today I'm gonna show you the 20 greatest exercises of all time, not just why they're great, but also the ways for you to help make them great by giving you the best tips for each one. Let's start breaking them down, guys, one by one. And it starts right here with the king of all lower body exercises. It's the squat. And the things we want to focus on are three, actually. We want to move the pelvis and the rib cage together at the same time. We don't want to segment them, so have the back come first and then the torso come up second. They got to move together, here and here, up. The next thing we want to do is at the top of the squat, contract the glutes. Quickly, a quick squeeze and then go down. What this does is it prevents the rotation of the pelvis one way or the other as we start to drift or get fatigued. Instead, keep that pelvis locked in, quick squeeze of the glutes. The last thing, it starts at the ground with your feet. Your feet, your toes should actually be gripping the ground like that. If you can get a good solid base of support by actually grabbing the ground, the squat will actually feel more powerful from the bottom all the way back up to the top. There's no better exercise for the biceps than a basic curl. And I don't really care if you do it with a straight bar or an easy bar, but what I do care about is maybe upping the weight a little bit and turning it into a cheat curl. Because the cheat curl has its own benefits. For me, it allows me to overload the eccentric. But what I like to do is put one leg out in front of me, particularly because I've got a torn bicep on that right side. But with the cheat curl, I get a little bit of momentum generation from this angle to vertical. So up to vertical, and then I can focus on that slow eccentric. Up to vertical, and then that slow eccentric. If I was square-footed when I do the cheat, the tendency is to lean too far back. But by having that slightly staggered stance, I not only protect this right arm of mine, but I limit that amount of cheat. The other thing is the wrist position. I want to have my wrists facing up at the top because I want to take the forearms out of it. So if I can keep the heel of my hand facing up towards the ceiling here like that, and then get that slow eccentric, I'm going to get the exercise right and put most of the focus and effort on the biceps where it should be. Of course, when it comes to the pressing exercises, you got to go with some version of a bench press. For me, it's the dumbbell bench press because for someone that already has shoulder issues, it's a lot more forgiving, and you might feel the same. However, don't forget to use your whole body when you do the lift. You gotta use leg drive here just like you would with a barbell variation, and that means when I'm down here, I wanna be able to push my feet out. So when I can push up on the dumbbells, I've got that opposite force. Here, push the feet out, drive the dumbbells up. Down, feet go out, drive them up. Now, some people might say that even the dumbbells themselves cause a little bit of shoulder irritation. Before you say I can't do the exercise, try this. Just slow down your repetitions. The slower you go, the more stability you introduce into the movement. And with stability, oftentimes that pain goes away because it's not a structural problem, it is a lack of stability. Between driving those feet into the floor and keeping that movement cadence down, you're gonna find you can do the exercise and make good gains from it. No list of the 20 greatest exercises of all time is gonna not include the pull-up. However, I would ask you to stop focusing on repetitions and instead add some weight, because the weighted pull-up is going to give you a great opportunity to build some additional muscle. What I want you to do though when you do the exercise is focus on two things. Keep those legs out in front of you to plug the energy leaks. I talked about that stability through your body is going to make it a lot easier for you to pull on every repetition. I also want you to think about driving your elbows down and into your back pockets. So instead of thinking about pulling from my wrists and forearms, pull from the elbows to make the exercise feel and work more the lats like it should every rep. And so if the squat is the king of the lower body exercise, then the prince has to be the barbell reverse lunge for me, because we introduce some different planes of motion, at least instability in that frontal plane when we take that staggered stance. But more importantly, we introduce some function that we need to have. We don't always walk around with a square-footed stance. We have to have the split stance strength, and we do it with the reverse lunge. Couple things I want you to focus though is maintaining stability while you do the exercise. So I don't step straight back in line because I have no base of support here. It's very narrow and I might feel too balanced challenged. So I want you to step back and a little bit out to the side. Okay, back and a little out to the side. You'll feel much more stable here. Again, I can work one leg at a time or alternate. The other thing I want to do is get the torso angle to be either upright or more lean forward. If I'm upright like this, I'm going to focus more of my effort on the quads, or if I take more of a lean forward like this, I'm going to shift a little bit more of the focus to the glutes. The exercise is incredibly versatile. I don't just have to do it with a barbell. I can certainly grab a pair of dumbbells and do the same thing. As I'm stepping back on the dumbbell, same thing with the width of support, and also rotating a little bit over that front knee will maintain that stability that you need to perform the exercise properly every single time. Now, when it comes to the big bang for your buck exercises, there's none better than the deadlift. However, if you do the exercise, you gotta get a few things right. The first thing is treating every rep as if it's a max. In other words, explode off of the ground. Just like that. Now, the other thing you wanna make sure that you're doing is that you're keeping your lats tight, your arms tight to your side. And what we do to enforce that is the $20 bill tip. What I'll do is I'll put the $20 bill right here in Jesse's armpit. And if I can pull that out, he's not doing a good job, but he's doing a good job there. Go up. And it stays in there the whole time. If you're weak and you're not holding that tight enough, you're gonna lose that $20 bill. The last thing is how you finish is important. Finish with your glutes coming forward towards the bar. There's an old tip, bar to glutes, glutes to bar. Pull that bar back towards your glutes, pull the glutes towards the bar at the finish, and you make sure you get it right every single time. When it comes to shoulder exercises, you gotta have some variation of a lateral raise if you wanna build up that middle delt best. For me, I'm gonna take the cable variation, and there's a reason for it. There's a better resistance curve throughout the entire range of the exercise. With a dumbbell, it's a little bit easy in the beginning, then it gets really hard at the end. Here we have more of a consistent resistance all the way through. We also have the benefit of getting this stretch on the middle delt in this position because our arm comes across our body under load. When we get up to the top, you want to make sure that you pause to isolate that contraction in that middle delt, also a little bit of that rear delt at the very top. This is my favorite way to do this exercise. I really don't care which one you choose, but make sure you choose some variation of a lateral raise. You're gonna see quite a few pulling exercises on my list because I don't think we do enough of it to counteract all that pushing we do. But one of my favorite of all time here is the one arm high cable row. Because what I can do is get a really good stretch on the lats because I can keep my hip drop back, right, the attachment to the pelvis, and get my arm way out up in front, the attachment of the lats up here. But then what I could do is drive down and put this elbow into my back pocket. So get that really tight adduction, back and down, good extension. I feel this probably more than any other lat exercise that I do. It's also athletic. I can drive it down, pivot off that back foot, make it more powerful and explosive if I wanted to. But more importantly, if I just want to get that really good, solid mind-muscle connection with my lats, this exercise is going to be in my top 20 for that reason and many others. When you want to hit the posterior chain, you got to get that hip through full extension. One of the best ways to do this, especially with heavier weights, to get that overload you need, is with a barbell hip thrust. A couple things you want to make sure you do if you're going to do this right. I tell everybody to push their hands into their thighs or down that direction as they push up. Not only will it create stability of the bar and prevent it from digging straight down into your legs and making it uncomfortable, but it actually provides that same stimulus on a bench press that your leg drive does to help assist the bar up. By pushing in this direction, you're able to get your hips back up in this direction to get to that full extension. And speaking of full extension, I mean it, full extension. Don't let those hips sag at the top. If you really want to work the glutes, you got to get at least back to neutral. That's where you want to make sure you're driving all the way up until you have one straight shelf from your chest all the way down to your knees to get this right. And so barbell curls are not the only bicep exercise that makes my list of 20. If you want to hit that long head outer portion of the biceps best, you're going to want to do a weight or curl. Now, don't let the opinion of an uninformed, inexperienced trainer or somebody with an agenda try to discourage you from doing the exercise. Instead, learn how to do it and do it right. As a matter of fact, we've actually talked about why this exercise is so great in its own video. I'll make sure I link that for you at the end. But what you want to make sure you're doing is supinate the hands into the dumbbell. In other words, try to turn your hands up into the dumbbell as you get towards the top. And secondly, keep that top end of the dumbbell flat up against the ceiling. In other words, make it like you're carrying food on top of that tray and lift it all the way up. You'll see that outer head of the biceps light up because of the positioning of the arm, positioned a little bit rotated inward, and because we get that good hard contraction with minimal front delt involvement. The fact is, guys, it's a great exercise, and it's one that belongs on my list. If you don't believe me, learn more. Yes, ab exercises belong in the top 20 also, but only if you're doing the ones that allow for overload, because our abs are muscles too and they can be developed. We're talking about the hanging leg raise. But what's key is you don't want to just lift your legs like this and show your feet to the camera. Instead, show your ass to the camera, because we know when we're doing that, we're getting that posterior pelvic tilt and the flexion of the spine that's responsible for the rectus abdominis. Now, the other tip I would give you is to stabilize your body so you can feel like the weight of the legs is actually lighter. The way we do that is by engaging the lats just a little bit. Pull down to start, and then initiate all your repetitions. Just by engaging from the top down, we plug some of those energy leaks that creates more stability, and that makes the exercise itself feel at least a little lighter and therefore a little easier. When it comes to triceps, my favorite exercise is always going to be the lying tricep extension. But the angles of the arms matter when you do the exercise. So what I always say is, don't finish in this position. This is the last time you're going to be here until the rep in the set is actually over. Instead, get the arms back, drop them back down behind you, and then extend up. I don't want to see the bar anymore. If the bar is here, it's right in view of my eyes. I don't want to see it. I want to keep it back here, drop back down, extend. Drop back down, extend. So if you never see that bar get back into sight again until the set's over, you know you've done it right. Now, what I can do though is to keep the overload coming. Once my triceps fatigue out, I can actually let the lats assist me and drive it back down into somewhat of a modified pullover. So if I start to not be able to get any strict reps out, I can drive the bar back to the top with the assistance of the arms, and in that case, I am gonna see the bar. But remember, that's in pursuit of overload. Start strict. When you need to cheat, add the lats in, but only at the end, and that's where you get the best combination. So other people's list of the greatest exercises of all time may overlook some of the smaller exercises, but not here, because I understand the value of a good corrective. And we're talking about the reverse hyperextension. Here we want to make sure we're getting good glute contraction. And let's face it, we oftentimes don't get enough of that, and we pay the price for it. So what I want you to do is position yourself on a bench like this with your hips right towards the end. The range of motion doesn't have to be that big as long as the initiation of the contraction comes from where it should, and that's right here in the glutes. So squeeze here and then lift the legs up. Now, overload. I mentioned that a bunch of times in this video. You don't have to be without overload options. You take a dumbbell right here, you put it between your feet, and you lift up, and now you've got some additional weight. The key is doing the exercise right, and most importantly, not forgetting to do it in the first place. And so now we're into the comment leaving portion of the video, because my list of 20 greatest exercises is actually gonna have a dumbbell pullover on it. Why? Because it's actually incredibly versatile. It can work the chest or the lats more depending upon how you do the exercise and how you move your body through space. So if you look at it, what we're talking about is the position of the elbows on the exercise. With them flared, you drive back right here with a good stretch on the lats to start, and you initiate the movement. You don't have to bring it so far up, you just drive right through here and you stop. If you want to change the focus to the upper chest, you can do that. You turn the hands in. You squeeze from the top. The elbows are no longer pointed out. They're squeezing towards each other, and you're almost trying to turn your hands this way towards the camera, though they're going to be stopped by the dumbbell. This is an incredibly effective upper chest exercise. If you were trying to do this more for the lats, you'd want to make one more adjustment. You drop your pelvis down. By doing that, you're going to increase the intensity of the stretch on the lats, because we know that that attachment of the lats down here in the pelvis is going to accentuate that stretch. Drop it down, work the lats, keep it up, work more of the upper chest. The exercise is incredibly versatile and one you want on your list of the greatest 20. I mean, come on, any list of the 20 greatest exercises of all time, for me, is gonna have my face pull on it, and I will fight that one to the death. But what we're talking about here is doing it right, because a lot of people never do the exercise properly. The first thing you can do is, from an equipment standpoint, is attach two of these ropes so you can get adequate travel of your arms. If not, you have to have some band that's going to allow you to have wider arm angles. But you can see what Jesse's doing here is he's keeping these 90-degree angles at the elbow. He's not finishing closed up like this, because when you're closed, you tend to get into internal rotation. When you're open, you get to do the second thing I want you to do, and that is allow your hands to beat your elbows to the back. If it's a race between your hands and your elbows, make sure your hands win. They get back there first. Pause at the top to make sure you get a good quality contraction, and you'll never underestimate this exercise again. It's one of the best for a good reason. When it comes to vertical pressing exercises, I always prefer to have you on your feet, but I also like to get a little bit of momentum because I can drive more weight up overhead, creating more overload. And for me, it's with the push press. But when you push, make sure you do it right. A lot of people just go like this, and they dip at their knees, and then they try to push. But you're not loading the strongest muscles in your body, and that's your hips and glutes. So what I want you to do is hinge. It's a hinge back, and then load up and press. But at the top, we can make sure we get this right if we get it right from the bottom. And again, if I hinge and then squeeze my glutes, right? Get them into good hip extension. That's gonna drive the force from the bottom up. Getting the glutes involved is always gonna increase the weight that you can handle overhead. Again, not all exercises are big exercises, but they certainly are largely important in terms of putting together a great comprehensive program. And for me, one of the smaller exercises you need to do is some form of external rotation. This is how we work our rotator cuff. And far too many of us have shoulder problems, especially from lifting, because we don't do enough balancing out of all the pushing exercises that we do. So you do a simple external rotation exercise, but don't get it wrong. A lot of people think that just because they're gonna do this thing with a band across their chest, they're instantly gonna do it right. Oftentimes they turn it into a resisted lateral raise. Instead, think about rotating your hand to the back. If these knuckles were eyes, I gotta change their view, right? I can't just have them continue to look straight ahead. They gotta look behind me. So you gotta rotate them back that way. The other thing is to prevent the lifting of the elbow away from you, just take a towel and pop it in underneath your armpit. So when I do that, I'm getting that rotation and I'm not getting that lift away, and I can make sure I'm doing it right, because these muscles don't get enough work. They're really small, but they need just a little bit of love and attention, and they will respond definitely. And so I mentioned my love of pulling exercises. One of my favorite is a high pull, because we can shift the focus a little bit to the upper back, still hitting the delts, but more of that upper back and traps. And it's also a better version of an upright row, because what we do is we correct the position of the hands and the elbows. Rather than having those hands lower than the elbows, we just do the direct opposite and get a better effect anyway. So those elbows stay down, the hands go up, you pull up towards the top, you can shrug at the top if you want to get more of the traps involved, but it's an overall powerful pulling exercise, and it's definitely one that you don't want to overlook if you're putting together a list of the best 20 exercises out there. The dumbbell bench press is not enough when we're talking about building up your chest, because one of the main functions we have to hit is adduction, crossing those arms over midline in order to fully activate the chest. So I got any variation of a crossover. Particularly, I like to go from high to low, but you can pick any angle you want. Just make sure you're doing two things for me. When you're pushing out, you want to think about almost driving your head backwards. Because if you can drive your body back and your arms out, you'll keep your shoulders back and your chest out. And that's gonna make the shoulders do less of the work and the chest do more of the work. The other thing I want you to do is focus on your hands specifically. Keep your hands open as you press out. It may sound funny, but that's gonna activate the entire extensor chain of the upper body. So we're getting less of the tendency of the forearm to participate in the flexion patterning, and instead we're getting the extension because we got that wrist and hand open. If you do that on every rep, guys, you're gonna feel it exactly where you should, and it's gonna justify its place here in the 20 best exercises you can do. One of my favorite pulling exercises on my list is the dead row. It's just a little bit more explosive, you can handle a little bit more weight, and it ties the movement together into a more total body exercise more effectively. All you're doing is basically deadlifting the bar off of the ground to the level of the knees. At that point, you can still pull the bar up in a row. You're not completely bent over like you would be in, let's say, a Pendlay row. You have a more upright posture at the top, which is going to protect your low back. But again, knowing how the kinetic chain works, if we can get explosive off the ground and keep it going, we can make for a great pulling exercise. This one hits my top 20 every single time. And so there are my top 20 exercises of all time. I'm sure if you asked any of these people around me, they'd have a different 20. I'm sure you do. Make sure you leave your favorites in the comments below. If you're looking for a complete program, guys, you can find it at ATHLEAN-X.com. And also, if you're a newbie to the gym and you're maybe doing more of the popular exercises, I put a video together about that too. You can find that right here. I want to make sure you're doing those right, and maybe even a few of those you're not doing at all. All right, guys, click subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss a video when we put one out. See you soon.